And welcome into Tennessee Tuesday, our second episode of season number 2. I'm your host, John Blankenship, with you this evening. Co-host Jason Boshears is out and about traveling, doing some other SCV business, or Michael Hardy, our guest this evening, or he may be, I don't know what he's doing. He's doing something that he's not with us tonight. So we miss Jason this evening, and he'll be back with us in a couple of weeks. And as you can see, Michael Hardy is our guest this evening. We'll be talking with him here in just a few minutes about the war in East Tennessee, and we'll have some discussion there, and we'll learn what all he's been involved in over the past several weeks. And, of course, you follow his program, Hardy on History, which is on Sunday evenings, and you can watch that. And we'll talk about that show as well. But let's go ahead and kick off with our disclaimer this evening. The views and opinions that are expressed during this broadcast are not those of the SCV, its GEC, or any divisions, camps, brigades, or anyone but our own tonight. So there's our disclaimer, and we're glad to have you here with us. Hope you've had a wonderful week so far, the first couple of days of this week, and it has been a busy one for me today. We've had some meetings, been kind of short-staffed at work, just a couple of us guys there. So it's been a long day, but I'm ready to kind of relax and talk some history this evening. And let's say hello to a few folks that have jumped on with us this evening. We'll put some of those comments on the screen tonight. Mr. Owens there from Virginia. Hello to him tonight. Also some others, Ryan Rogers jumping in there from the Alabama division. Good to see Ryan this evening. Also some other folks from all across the Confederation from the Texas-Louisiana line joining us tonight. There's Derek Glover as well from the Cumberland Plateau. He's up around Alvin C. York territory. I'm sure you're familiar with that, Mr. Hardy.
Yes, sir.
He's up not too far from your way. Also, Mr. Steve Reed is with us tonight. Looking forward to another great program. We hope it's a great one for you tonight, and do appreciate you watching tonight on, of course, SCV Chat, Tennessee Tuesdays, social media pages. Donald Gaines joining us there from Florence, Mississippi, from Camp 2278. Also, others tonight from up in Kentucky, the Kentucky Division Commander with us this evening. Kyle Thompson. David Pope, of course, with us. David has a program as well on Friday nights in the Friends of the Douglas South Hall Freeman page. He's 7 o'clock on Friday nights, of course, in Camp 87 there in Knoxville. Mr. Charles Array joining us this evening. I think he's been all around our area. I know he's been traveling, been following him on Facebook, and good to see him tonight. Let's see others we see here. You see some of the comments. We're going through several of those. Mr. Brooks here with us tonight. Rich Garcia, our lieutenant commander in the Tennessee Division. He's on board. Derek's got another comment there. And we do want to mention that, Derek, thanks for bringing that up. Connor Bond, one of the hosts and founders of SCV Chat. Connor's mom had been sick for several months now. Things did turn worse, and she did pass away. So our thoughts and prayers are with Connor, his sister there, and the loss of their mother. Great lady, and I believe the funeral service was today. So our thoughts and prayers continue with Connor Bond and his family during this time of loss of his mom. Know he's hurting, so we're definitely praying for them. Let's see also others are joining us tonight. Mr. Elliot Jackson, he's on with us. Al joining there from Tullahoma. So several folks here from all around the Confederation. Camp 314 with us tonight. So again, we're glad to see all those folks. Mr. LeRae has been in Arkansas and Tennessee. I'm suspecting he passed my way if he came down I-40. I wish we could have got to catch up while he was this way. He may not have come I-40, but I suspect he did if he was heading back into Arkansas. So hope he has safe travels and appreciate him being with us tonight. So let's go ahead and jump into our discussion this evening and our guest, Mr. Michael C. Hardy, who is an author and historian, of course, host of Hardy on History. You see him all over the place in North Carolina, Tennessee. He'll travel about anywhere you want him to. If we need him to go to Canada, Mexico, overseas, I think he'll go.
Is it warmer there right now? Mexico, sure. Canada, I'm not so sure about.
It may be a little chillier up that way, but you get down to Mexico area, you'll have a little heat and not find you something good to eat there that'll bring a little bit of heat.
Maybe so. I will say good evening, and it's great to see everybody this evening. Speaking of warmer, I am speaking at a Lee Jackson banquet in Ocala, Florida at the end of the month, January 24th. So I'm looking to be someplace warmer, especially after the next few days.
Yeah, you've got some cold weather up your way. You're a little bit cooler. We're right now in the 50s here in West Tennessee. Yeah, so what's it like up there where you are now?
35 degrees here right now, and they're calling for snow tomorrow night. So it's okay. I mean, I sit in here by the fire and work, but
there you go. Yeah. As long as you're warm, you're in the house and taking it easy, staying warm. And let's talk a little bit about you for folks that are watching tonight. I know many know you, but many may not. And we want to kind of do a little introduction here. Of course, we said author and historian. That's kind of generic. That covers a lot of stuff. You have written several books. Michael, tell me a little bit about some of the books you've written. And let's kind of start there, a little bit about you tonight.
Sure. Well, I started researching writing about 30 years ago. Grew up reenacting, really grew up reenacting. I started when I was 10 and joined SCV camp in my later teens, the Bluford M. Sims camp in Ocoee, Florida, but then moved here to Western North Carolina. I have a lot of family from Western North Carolina, East Tennessee, Eastern Kentucky, and got here and really was standing there. We actually moved to Boone for my wife to go to grad school, and I'm standing there looking at the shelves, and I'm like, man, there are so many great regiments, and stories out there, and nobody's telling those stories. And that's really where it started. I wrote my first book on the 37th North Carolina troops that served in the Army of Northern Virginia, and almost everything since then has in some way almost been connected to that first project, whether it's writing about Western North Carolina or East Tennessee, and it's not just wartime history. I write a lot of local history. I write a lot of North Carolina history. It just really goes all over the place. I think history should be accessible.
That's very true.
And so many times it's not.
So what kind of where did you get your writing skills? Is that something you just developed for the first book, or
I was a reader?
Formal training?
No, well, I mean, I went to university and all that other stuff, but it's really reading. I grew up devouring books left and right. My parents would take me to the library I would check out, and I grew up reading a lot of the classics. Clifford Dowdy, Burt Davis, Douglas Southall Freeman, Bruce Catton, just, all of those. Alan Nevins is another one. All of those books. And I really, at the time period, I really only read about the war almost exclusively.
What sparked your interest in history? Maybe I should ask that. Did that come in with your parents? How did that?
No, I had an uncle. When I was 10 years old in 1982, I had an uncle take me to a Civil War reenactment, and he bought me a hat and he bought me a jacket, and I got to carry the flag. And I thought that was the grandest thing in the world. And I went home and I said, Dad, we have got to go do this. And we did, and we'd go to, 3 or 4 reenactments a year. And then when I got old enough and could drive myself, and then, my late teens, early 20s, I was doing 25 or 30 events a year, traveling all over the eastern half of the United States, from the 125th Gettysburg to the 135th Gettysburg, the Sharpsburg / Antietam event that year, Murfreesboro, all of the big national events, got to go to all of those. And I remember being at Chickamauga, it's probably 1997. Our battalion fought in 4 of the 5 battles they had that weekend, and we were in the night battle on Saturday. And I remember taking the battalion back to camp, and I just happened to look back at the right time, and one of their aerial charges went off over the battalion.
Oh, wow.
And it just lit everybody up. And I'm like, this is the coolest thing in the world. Now, I don't do a lot of reenacting anymore.
But that's kind of how you got really the interest started, was from the reenacting.
Yep. We volunteer at a couple of historic sites as interpreters now. So I'm not out going to a lot of reenactments. If I can come home and not have a long rifle to clean, I'm really happy about that. Especially
do you use
the
the term living historian more now? Is that
the
term
living historian or historical interpreter?
Okay.
And that's really when you're at a historic site, you're really a interpreter. You're often interpreting pieces of the past for the public. And a lot of times it's mundane things, how they cook, how they lived, how much firewood they had to chop. But you do a lot that is site specific.
But it's connecting people to that time period, and hope it sparks an interest in them to want to dig deeper and learn more beyond just the basics.
Yes. And you'll find a lot of people that have a lot of great questions. You'll have people, we've noticed at some of the sites we volunteer at on a regular basis, they come back, they've heard something new that they want to talk about or something, and they'll come back again and again and again, and, with new questions and things. And that's a really cool part of it, is building that relationship with people. They're stuck in the 21st century. I'm stuck in the 18th or 19th century, depending on the site. But it's really great. It really is. And a lot of times people will talk about how there's not a lot of young people, but there are. I mean, we've noticed that. We've really started to pay attention to the amount of young people that are coming to these historic sites. That's good. And we've noticed, especially in the past year, since we have this influx of new people that are moving to the South, whether I'm volunteering in North Carolina or Tennessee or Southwest Virginia or wherever, we've got people coming out to these historic sites that are saying, I'm new to the area and I want to learn more.
And I'm seeing that same thing. We've had a lady that came in through Humboldt here last week, doing it. They were doing a little bit of video, starting to get into that. Her and her grandson, she's in her 70s and just now learning video and doing vlogs for YouTube. And she said, hey, I've heard about Humboldt, that it had some history here with this and that, and got to show her some sites and recommend some sites. And she said, I moved to the South. I was raised up north. And she wanted to learn about the South. And one of those things she asked about, she said, I've heard you have a Confederate monument here.
Right.
And the lady, we won't go into a lot of detail. I wasn't expecting that from her, wanting to see the Confederate monument.
Right.
She wanted to know the history. And I think there's people moving in here. They want to learn about where they're moving to.
Yes.
Who these people are.
Yes. And I've always been like that. I can't visit some place, even if I'm just there overnight. I still want to know the history. When I was younger, the first place I'd go, any new town I went to, was the cemetery.
Yeah.
Just to look at, the architecture and gravestones and the iconography and all of that. And, if you got a local history museum, I was in Iuka, Mississippi.
Hmm.
I spoke to the camp in Columbia, Tennessee, and I spoke to the camp in Athens, Alabama, and I kind of took this little jog through Shiloh and to go to
Yeah.
Corinth and Iuka. And there, I stopped at a local history museum, and the docent there was just so excited to have visitors. And I was really interested in the battle, and he talked about that for a long time, and went to just a great collection, fantastic collection. And that's one of the cool things. If you go to a town, and you have a few minutes, visit that local history museum, visit the library, just,
And to
soak in.
connect with those local stories. And something I
Yep.
always love is when you get there, you find a connection maybe from where you're from. It shows what a small world
Yep.
that era really was.
Yep.
When I go to East Tennessee and then somebody at the local history museum mentions a guy, I'm like, well, that name's familiar. And then they connect back to West Tennessee.
Yep.
It's amazing how small of a world it is.
It is an incredibly small world. Yep. I agree, my friend.
Well, good conversation tonight. We'll be talking for the next hour. We're going to talk a little bit of East Tennessee and its time during the war between the states. We'll kind of break some of that down, have some discussion as well. But before we take our first break, Mr. Hardy, let's talk a little bit about the program Hardy on History. Let's go ahead and preview that for folks that recognize you from that. Where can they watch it? When can they watch it?
So, probably 8 years ago, it's probably coming up on 8 years,
Mhm.
I decided to do a history program, originally just on Facebook. And I don't even remember what it was originally called. But it was Sunday Night History Chat for a long time, and I finally changed it to Hardy on History. Have ideas that I'm going to do a whole YouTube series in the near future, mostly about local history in different places. But it's Sunday nights, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time period. You can almost always find it on Facebook, but sometimes it's on YouTube. But I don't always get there every Sunday night. Sometimes
Sure.
I'm traveling or something, or we've been in a historic site and I've drug in, and I'd say that my talker's tired, and
Yeah, you've just done all you can do. I know how
that's
that
all the
goes.
history I have at that moment. But most Sunday nights, especially in the wintertime, we'll sit down. We usually wind up just talking about the 1860s, but I'm happy to take that conversation just about any place.
So where do they find you? If someone's not familiar with it, how can they find
Go
where
to
you're
Facebook,
broadcasting on?
look up Hardy on History.
Simple enough, easy to do.
Simple enough. Yep.
So that's going to be Sunday nights, 7:30. Is that right?
7:30 Central Time,
7:30
8:30
Central, and then 8:30 Eastern time.
Eastern Time. Yes, sir.
So of course you can see that program. Well, we need to take our first break. Michael Hardy is our guest this evening as we're talking history discussion. We'll kind of have a wide topic here tonight and hope you'll enjoy the program and be with us. But let's say hello to a couple more folks before we take our first break here. Brigade Commander Dennis Stubblefield joining us from Portland tonight. So he's here with us. Also, Toby Oakley joining. Good evening to him as well. From our friends out in Arizona, Robert Corbin with us tonight. Ryan Rogers agreeing with us this evening. We always like when folks agree with us, but sometimes I like when folks don't because, hey, I'm not too good to learn something new and even be corrected. I've had to be done that way. We all don't know it all. So it's always good to learn from one another. And we hope these discussions like this, I know when I leave here tonight, I've got my notepad here. I'm going to be taking notes because every time I watch Mr. Hardy, I know I'm going to learn something new that I just don't know about. And he's a great researcher, a great author, and great historian. So I think you're going to enjoy this program tonight. And one more before we take our first break. Missouri bringing up the rear. My apologies there. And Springfield coming up a little late there, but we're glad to have Mr. Jenkins here with us tonight, joining us just from up the road in Missouri. And different folks say it different ways. Some folks say Missouri, some folks say Missouri. Now, people tell me I say it wrong, Michael. They say I'm not saying I should be saying Missouri, But here in West Tennessee and in Gibson County and Humboldt, everybody I've grown up around, and we're all good Southern folks, we say Missouri. So
we do too.
Different folks say it different ways. That's okay. We've got a town here. It's kind of funny. If you're familiar with the name, Rutherford is how it's spelled. Yes. But if you're in Gibson County, you don't say it like that. It's got an L in it. It's Rutherford. But well, we have somebody's not from here if they pronounce it wrong.
We have a town named for the Revolutionary War general and a county. It's Rutherford County and a Rutherfordton, North Carolina. So
that's how you do it. Every area has its own way to pronounce it. And when somebody's a stranger and they're not from there, they'll mess that up. There's another town in Middle Tennessee you may have heard of. It was talking about Irish. Some will say Erin, Tennessee, Erin. Folks around here, and some that I know up that way, they pronounce it Erin, like you've got an ear as Erin. So
my mom was born in a little coal mining camp in Wise County, Virginia, that everybody calls Rhoda.
Okay.
RHODA.
Oh, wow.
There's no E-I-E anywhere or anything on the end of that word, but it's Rhodey.
I love it. I love it. Well, again, our time right now, it's about 7:21. Thank you for watching Tennessee Tuesday this evening. We do need to say thanks to our Patreon sponsors this evening. If you'd like to be a Patreon member and help support SCV Chat and Tennessee Tuesday and all the programs that are associated with SCV Chat, again, you can go to scvchat.com. And you can become a Patreon member from a small amount of money to a large amount of money and become a donor and supporter of this channel. Again, it's not free to make this happen. It does cost money to make it happen and bring you this programming. So we hope you'll consider becoming a sponsor of this show and, of course, SCV Chat in general. So you see those names there of those folks that have supported us. And also we want to say thanks to Dr. Chris Cummings down in Mississippi. He's a specialist in knee pain. And man, I've got a lot of knee pain and joint pain, and he can take care of that and get you back feeling better, get you moving around better. Dr. Chris Cummings, he is in Mississippi, a longtime SCV member, and does a good job. And he is one of our sponsors of this program here this evening of Tennessee Tuesday on SCV Chat. So we're glad to have you here with us. We're going to come back after this break. We'll be continuing our discussion with Michael Hardy this evening, and we'll be talking about the history of the war between the states and East Tennessee and its overall involvement in the whole war. So it's going to be a good discussion. We'll be back right after this.
There is a place nestled in the rolling farmland of southern Middle Tennessee. A home constructed in 1837, nearly lost to the ravages of war. Saved by a servant and a Confederate general. A place where families loved and lost. If walls could talk, what stories could be told? If a place, a home, can feel love, loss, pain, surely this is one of those places. Nearby is a more recent structure, and inside are the stories of heroes and heroines, stories of battles won and lost, stories of sacrifices made by the people of its native soil. A place that will tell the true and complete story of the Southland and the war fought for its freedom. From the causes that led to the conflict to the modern-day struggles to protect Southern history. Historic Elm Springs and the Confederate Museum at Elm Springs are the general headquarters for the Sons of Confederate Veterans. A place where the story of the Southland and its historic struggle is preserved and told. Come and discover your history.
And welcome back into Tennessee Tuesday on SCV Chat. I'm your host, John Blankenship. My guest tonight is Michael C. Hardy, author and historian. We're glad to have him with us this evening. If you'd like to learn more about the organization, we'll be talking about some throughout the program tonight, the Sons of Confederate Veterans, especially the Tennessee Division. You can visit our website, TennesseeSCV.org. I serve currently as the Tennessee Division Commander. And if you're in Tennessee, we would love to have you as a member of one of our camps. If you're outside of Tennessee, we'd be happy to help you find a camp that's closest to you that you can join and be a part of. So TennesseeSCV.org is the website. Also, the disclaimer this evening, reminder, the views that you hear and expressed on this program are our own. Nothing to do with the SCV. It's DEC, GEC, brigades, camps, any of those involved. These are our own opinions tonight. So we're glad to have you with us tonight on Tennessee Tuesday. This is our second episode of season 2. Mr. Hardy, it's hard to believe tonight that we have already gone through our first season of 16 episodes. It's been a lot of fun, something me and Jason have talked about for a good while about wanting to do this. I'd kind of had this idea. Connor and Harrison started off over 5 years ago now with SCV Chat to bring our mission, our cause, and bring history out to the public and what we do. It's been successful, and we're glad to be able to be a part of that. And we continue tonight with talking with you. You're no stranger to video, of course, on social media, as you've been doing a program we talked before the break for several years now. It started with going back, about 8 years, I think you said it was?
I think we're coming right up on 8 years. Probably in the next 3 or 4 weeks, it will be 8 years.
Yeah, hard to believe that time. It was Sunday Night History Chat. I know when I first started watching is what it was called. And Sunday I think I've joined you a couple of times. We've had some good programs. Always enjoy watching. And now Hardy on History. It's got one of those big names now to it.
That's right. That's right. Maybe it'll go someplace.
Absolutely. Well, there's Mike Beck. I know you know him. He's not too far away from you up there in Morristown. So hello.
Doing a great job at the Longstreet Museum.
Yeah, he does a great job. And we'll be up there for the Tennessee Division reunion that's coming up in April. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later on as well. My friend Jim Collinsworth, who is our Tennessee Division chaplain, joining us this evening. So hello to Jim. Glad to have him here too. And also from the great state of Arkansas over in Hot Springs, from the James M. Keller Camp 648, Mr. Floyd Harvey with us, was there, I think it was about 3 years ago, I believe it was, for the national reunion. Great job there. I look forward to coming back to Hot Springs again. So we appreciate him being with us and all of you watching tonight. And now let's kind of jump into our topic this evening. We're going to be talking about East Tennessee, the war between the states, Confederate Union. We'll kind of go that way. And I'm not as knowledgeable, I don't mind admitting, of that area that I should be. So I know I'm going to learn something tonight. I think you watching this evening with us will learn something. And Michael Hardy, again, is our guest. And let's kind of jump into that conversation tonight, Michael. And I'm going to let you kind of lead off, and then we'll kind of go the direction you want to go.
Sounds great. Sounds great. So probably 20 years ago, I was working on a book of, it was about the 58th North Carolina. And there were only 4 North Carolina infantry regiments that would serve in the Western Theater, either with the Army of Tennessee or the Department of Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi. Well, the 58th was one of them. They spent the first 13 months of their service in East Tennessee. In fact, they may have actually been organized in East Tennessee. A couple of different stories about where that took place, but they spent the first 13 months basically doing garrison duty, stretched out from Cumberland Gap all the way down toward Campbell's Bridge, not quite to Knoxville, but in that general area. And so one of the things I did as a part of my research is, I'm hitting the libraries over in East Tennessee, and I'm trying to find information, and you never know what little piece you're going to find that is going to help you tell a story. Well, I discovered that, and we'll come back to this in a minute. I discovered that there wasn't really a lot on the Confederate side when it comes to East Tennessee and the war.
Yeah.
And And I'll tell you a little side story about that. There were a lot of members of the 58th North Carolina who got sick during the war and died in East Tennessee. And there had been 2 or 3 of us that had looked for the cemetery where they were buried at for years. And a friend of mine lives in the county north of me, just happened to go into their local museum in Campbell County, Tennessee, and asked that question. The question we'd all been asking, do you know where there's a Confederate cemetery around here? Well, there was an elderly lady in the museum that day, in the historical building that day, who said, my family has this story.
Oh, that's the ones you love.
Confederate soldiers that had been buried in their family cemetery. And it's called the DeLapp Family Cemetery outside of La Follette. And a bunch of people got involved, cleaned the cemetery, got a bunch of stones installed. And I spoke at the dedication service for that. And that was probably 20 years ago, give or take.
Now, were there any marked burials there, or was it just all legend that they were there, stories from family?
You could see the graves and you could see the field stones.
Oh, wow.
And so there's probably over 100 Confederate soldiers buried in that cemetery.
And they died from illness, sickness, disease?
Yep, illness, sickness, and disease. I don't know what made them sick. It could have been the water that made them sick. They died in the wintertime. There's not a lot of stories of measles or anything like that. But they just died. They didn't get brought back home. They were buried in that lady's family cemetery.
So what kind of time frame is that? How long, what kind of period did they die in?
Late 1862, like October of 1862 through August of 1863.
Oh, wow.
And so that is one of those cases where we were able to change history. I mean, document history. And I know sometimes we talk about how we shouldn't be changing history. There's a lot of history to learn and things that need to be updated and
things, because we've got so much, and technology's come into this. I'm sure you've seen this in your years of research when you used to have to travel everywhere, and you still have to do that. There's no way out of some of that.
No.
But when those researchers were doing it 50 years ago, 60 years ago, they didn't have access to some of the things we now have, and which
when I started
change history, but it's maybe corrected or added more information to.
Well, at times we flat out change history. We will learn new things that change what we thought we knew. And it's great being able to tell those stories, to have somebody to walk up to you and say, I'd never heard of that before, or that's that changes what I thought I knew about that event, because we found a new set of letters or a diary or something that allows us to better tell that story.
How does that affect you in writing? That's something that's kind of been a challenge to me, and being local historian, county historian here, and telling our local stories. You always learn something new. I feel like when I've written this down and say, put it out to the public, maybe it's using social media, and then this new thing comes up that changes some of that. How do you handle that as a writer and as an author? When these things, you put a book out, and man, this whole new story is coming, it's changed some of that. How do you handle that and deal with that?
I often say that if you want to know if something's right or wrong, put it in print.
Yeah.
Because, somebody's going to come up and say, that's not true or something. I think a lot of times if you talk long enough and beat the bushes, especially in doing local history, then a lot of times you're pretty sure about what you're going to write. But a lot of times it's in how you set it up. We think we know this story. This is what we think we know. This is what we heard. If you know something different, send us a note and we can make an addendum or something to this. But it is a challenge, and there have been occasions where I've printed something, written something, and had it published. And somebody has come in with new information or something.
But that's what makes it exciting too. I mean, that's the fun of research. I mean, you're like me. We love research.
Yes.
We love discovering these things. I probably bore people today. I know I bore my wife to death with some of this stuff, Michael, saying I've learned this new thing about somebody that's been dead 125, 130 years. And it's told so much more, but I want to make sure this is documented. It's important, like what we're talking about tonight. A lot of folks don't know much about Confederates in East Tennessee, that they were there, that there was Confederate stuff happening in East Tennessee, not all Union.
Yes, I'll give you one more story, and then we'll go to East Tennessee. I wrote a book on North Carolina's aviation history that came out about 8 or 9 months ago. And as I'm sitting here doing the research, and it was a tremendous amount of research, I kind of had this running dialogue with my wife while she was at the college. I would send her a note going, "You're not going to believe this." And I would launch into some story about something I had found. And so she said I should have had a chapter in the book that says, "You're not going to believe this," or,
That's great.
something
That's
along
great.
those lines. But there is so much to learn. And you would think there's probably 70,000 books on the war. You would
You
think
think
that
it would all be discovered by now and known and
yes,
documented, but it's just not. Even I
it's
think of my
not.
local area, your local area, I'm
Yep.
always learning something new.
Always learning something new. So I was that 20 years ago working on that book of that Confederate regiment that was stationed in East Tennessee. Kind of really whetted my appetite to try and learn more and dig more and get more information out there.
So the
So
58th North Carolina, where are
yes,
they? They're based out of where in North Carolina? What area are we talking
here in the
about?
mountains.
Okay.
In the mountains where I live, all 12 of those companies came within a county or two from where I live right now.
Okay.
They were there in East Tennessee until Braxton Bragg did the big drawdown and shipped almost everybody to fight at Chickamauga. And then after Chickamauga, they are connected with the Army of Tennessee for pretty much the rest of the war. They do miss the Spring Hill and Nashville campaigns because they were guarding prisoners. They were not connected. I mean, they're still with the Army-ish, but they were escorting prisoners back through North Alabama and Mississippi, so they missed that campaign.
Well,
But
who are
they're
some
with
of the
Army.
folks leading the 58th North Carolina? Are there some names that our viewers are going to recognize right off, or they're mostly unknown names to us?
The colonel is actually the namesake from my camp,
Mhm.
the Colonel John B. Palmer. Fascinating individual. He was born in Plattsburgh, New York. And after his dad, who was a 2-term U.S. congressman, passed away, he moved to Detroit, Michigan, makes an absolute fortune, and in 1858 moves to about 3 miles from where I am right this minute, builds a
Wow.
big fine house, becomes colonel of the 58th, is wounded at Chickamauga, and then becomes departmental commander in Western North Carolina. This is after East Tennessee, after
Mhm.
Burnside takes over East Tennessee. Yankees burned his house in June of 1864. And after the war, he moves to Columbia, South Carolina, becomes president of 2 different banks and vice president of 2 different railroads. Hung out with Wade Hampton,
Oh, mhm.
just the upper crust of society.
Well,
The
he's
first
one of
time,
those you mentioned, being born up north
yep,
and coming to the South. Where was his viewpoint? Where did he stand at the beginning of the war? Was he a Unionist?
he
Well, where did he stand?
no,
What
he
changed
was
it?
not so much a unionist, like
Mhm.
many people. He didn't want war.
Yeah.
But when after the war is over, he has to apply for presidential pardon. Some of his neighbors from Detroit write in and say that he should not be a pardoned because he was an unreconstructed rebel.
Oh.
So obviously his
Mhm.
sympathies were really with Southern ideals. So, I mean, he's right there. I'll tell you a funny story. The first time I ever visited his grave, he's buried in Columbia, South Carolina. My wife, Elizabeth, went in the cemetery office because that cemetery he's buried in is huge. And there are 2 unused plots in 2 unused grave sites in his section, his family section. And the lady in the cemetery office was doing her best to sell those to my wife and me so we could be buried with Colonel Palmer in Columbia, South Carolina. So that's just one of those amusing stories, family stories, history stories. But so 58th North Carolina troops were in East Tennessee for 13 months. guarding gaps. This is the time of Carter's raid and
Yeah.
several other things going on there in East Tennessee. And that kind of whets my appetite for that area's history. I have ancestors that lived in East Tennessee. They
Mhm.
were a part of the Watauga Association and
Mhm.
that whole area going back into the 18th century. A few years later, I come up with this idea to write a book about some of the counties from North Carolina and East Tennessee that butt up against each other. So on the Tennessee side, this would be Johnson County, Carter County, Washington County, Greene County. Unicoi County didn't exist then, but on down. And then there are North Carolina counties, Ashe, Watauga,
Yeah.
Avery, where I live, didn't exist, but Mitchell, Yancey, Madison, Jackson, those counties. And what I wanted to look at is the way that the war moved back and forth across those lines. Because here in Western North Carolina, almost all of our military action during the war comes from East Tennessee.
Okay.
It originates in those East Tennessee counties. There's not much that goes on prior to September of 1863, but in September of 1863, almost all of the Confederates have been stripped out of the area. Burnside marches in and takes Knoxville.
Well, let's talk about, and you mentioned how it came from really East Tennessee into your area. For folks that may be new and learning more about this tonight, why did it move? Is it landscape? What's the reasoning you see there?
The landscape is part of it. There are just a handful of passes through the mountains that would allow folks from East Tennessee to gain access to Western North Carolina. But the area, especially in Western North Carolina, is so isolated. We don't have a railroad. We don't have large numbers of troops, Confederate troops in the area. There are a lot of men who joined the Confederate Army from the area, but they've all shipped out into these other regiments that are in the Army of Northern Virginia, that are in the Army of Tennessee. And so the area is really unprotected. But one of the things I learned is not all, but a lot of the activity is family-based.
Okay.
So you will have dissidents or men from Western North Carolina that should be in the army because of the conscription laws. Well, they are avoiding conscription and they will run over into East Tennessee. They will join one of the federal regiments and they'll get a uniform, they'll get a rifle, they'll get fed, they'll get money. And they come back in small groups and start to raid the farms of their pro-Confederate neighbors here in Western North Carolina. And there are numerous examples of that taking place. And as we move out of,
and that's really because the Confederates they've moved on from your area and it's kind of left open.
I
guess you've got these scoundrels, I guess I kind of want to call them. They see an opportunity here.
Yes, they do. They see an opportunity here. So they will come over and they will rob the countryside blind, literally. And they are, and in the interpretive programs we do about this time period, we describe it like this. There's a knock in the middle of the night on your cabin door. And these Unionists or whatever you want to call them, scallywags is a great word, will come into your cabin and take everything you own. Literally everything you own. They will take your bed tick, your mattress, your bed sack off your bed, cut it open, take out all of the feathers or straw or whatever you got in there, take everything you have, including the clothes that you're wearing, and ride off into the night. Sometimes they'll burn your cabin down, but not always. They will ride off.
Is there much wealth in this area of North Carolina at all, or is it very?
These are poor people. These are poor people. A lot of the stuff that they take, and this is a really unexplored topic, but a lot of the stuff they take winds up for sale in a black market in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Wow.
And it's just, anything that they can get and steal. Charles, I think scallywag sometimes is too nice of a term.
Yeah,
but I
probably
won't
is being
really.
nice. Yeah.
We'll keep it PG this evening and not tell you what I really think about these people. But at the same time, your Confederate ancestors sometimes are doing the exact same thing.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
They are going over into East Tennessee, and they are trying to find the people responsible for who have raided their farms, and they're raiding their farms
and doing the same thing to them,
and doing the exact same thing. Now, I've never found even a slight reference to a black market like the one that was in Knoxville, in any place like Asheville or Morganton or any place. I'm not saying it didn't exist.
Yeah.
But that comes up to something we're going to talk about here in a minute. But about how little this information is and how skewed it is. But it's not so much the blue versus the gray in these areas that I live in the East Tennessee. It's not so much the blue versus the gray. These are family fights.
Yeah.
Because we're all related somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And, before the war, something happened and I have ill feelings towards you. And so we're going to use this war as an excuse
to retaliate or whatever.
To retaliate.
Yeah.
And it's not so much a North versus South here, even though a lot of people will align on either side. It's just a continuation of family feuds.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
How did it affect it? And I imagine it did for years after the war. These things have happened. What was it like between these families at this point?
It was brutal. And I actually talked to somebody today about this who's trying to do some research. He's actually a PhD student. And one of the things he's looking at is the way that the families split after the war. And I was going through some things that I had. There are a ton of Confederate soldiers from the mountains, at least from Western North Carolina, that wound up in Coos County, Oregon. They got as far away from Southern Appalachia as they could and still remained in the United States. I mean, they're just gone, and so many people. I've got family stories of fights. I've got one story of, two brothers got into a fight who served on opposing sides, and one of them killed the other one. And it's really hard to research that Reconstruction time period here because of a lack of sources. I wish I had more that said how, John and his brother Thomas, how they handled family functions and funerals and court week and church, because they served on opposing sides.
Yeah.
But they don't have that.
It's been lost. It was oral stories that have just been lost to time.
Yep. Just lost the time. And in many cases, a lot of the atrocities that took place, especially against women, people didn't talk about it.
Yeah. It's just, we talk about things like that now, but these were things you kept close to you and just never discussed again.
Never discussed it. And I understand that on a personal level. As a researcher and a writer, that drives me crazy. You
want to know these things.
I want to know these things, and I want to tell these stories and preserve that history and get that information out there.
Was there any home guard left in your area of North Carolina? Were there any men left, older men that were able to protect any? Or
yes. So with the home guard, at least in North Carolina, back up for a minute though. When conscription was passed in April of 1862, if you were a county official, if you were a justice of the peace or the sheriff or the coroner or whatever, you didn't get drafted. You did not get conscripted in the Confederate Army. Those are like civil officials, your postmaster and all of that, and they were exempt from Confederate service. But at least here in North Carolina, when the Home Guard is created, they are liable for home guard duty. So that becomes the basis for your home guard companies. And all counties had at least one home guard. They at times were pretty brutal. If you have seen the movie Cold Mountain or read the book, Charles Frazier's book, a lot of that is based upon true accounts. Now, if your family were good pro-Confederate people, the home guard was your best friend. Yeah. They'd come cut wood for you. They would help with your harvest, whatever. If your family had crossed over, or if they were out lying in the woods, not wanting to serve either side, the home guard was your worst enemy.
Yeah.
And the home guard continues to exist here in most of the counties through early 1865. So it's a true challenge, and home guard records are few and far between.
I mean, that's the same way it is here. We have in our county court minutes, we have who they were, but that's really all we know of them. We don't know how they acted, what they did.
Yeah. It's a really, really hard to do that level of research.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned, and this is something I made a note of because I want to do some more research on something I hadn't thought of, is it was county officials, maybe elected officials that held more important roles.
Yes.
That avoided that conscription there. That's interesting to see some of the names in our local ones that it's give me something to research now.
At least here in North Carolina, we don't have county commissioners. We have a court of pleas and sessions.
And we would, the same way. Yeah.
Each county is divided up into however many districts. And each one of those districts has a justice of the peace. And those justices of the peace make up your court of pleas and sessions. And they're kind of doing the role of what county commissioners do today. They are working on the roads. They're doing bastardy bonds. They're doing just any of that stuff. We don't have bastardy bonds anymore, but that's something they did then. And, that was something, indentures, just taking care of the county courthouse, the jail, whatever. That's what they did.
I really liked it, what we call road commissioners today, what you had in our area. Same, I'm sure, like you did. You were responsible for this section of the road. Someone was appointed over it. And we look in some of our court minutes for our county court. And, man, it was a big deal. These people that didn't take care of their road, the fines that would come from that. And it was pretty serious.
Pretty serious stuff. And those men were not liable for conscription. But at least in North Carolina, they are like the nucleus of the home guard. Other home guard members are like soldiers that are have been discharged from the Army for sickness or wounds, some type of disability. A lot of times they're in the home guard. In fact, at least 2 of our 3 home guard commanders here were former Confederate soldiers. One of them was wounded, and I think the other one got out on a sick discharge. But so that's, and home guard records are hard to come by.
They don't exist.
They weren't just. For the county north of me today, I was able to create a roster. One comes from a letter that one of the home guard members wrote that's in the state archives, talking about the men he served with. And he was an old man when he wrote the letter. And the other one comes in one day, I'm doing a program, and a lady walks in with a brown paper bag. And in that paper bag is a book that's got the roster. It's a wartime penciled in book, the roster for Company A of the 11th Battalion Home Guard. And so I know more about that home guard than I do others because I have that roster. So if you're out there doing research on a particular county, you never know what's going to walk through that door, that somebody has had in their family. It's in their attic, it's in a trunk or whatever. And we always get really excited when that happens. You being in the library business.
Yeah. So we know the 58th North Carolina spent their time in East Tennessee. And what else was happening in that area at the time? Do we want to kind of jump back to that?
Well, we've got a lot going on. We've got the bridge burning episode in November of 1861. That is why the 58th North Carolina is formed. A bunch of dissidents, Unionists in East Tennessee come up with this plan. Samuel Carter's involved. Come up with this plan that if they can knock out the railroad bridges in between Bristol and Chattanooga. Then the Federal Army, which is poised above Cumberland Gap, can swiftly move. This is their story. Swiftly move into the area, and all the local Unionists in East Tennessee will be saved from the evil Confederates. And it didn't work out very good. There were several bridges burned, but the Federal Army up above Cumberland Gap never got permission to enter the state. And so the Confederate forces very quickly gathered together and chased a lot of the Unionists, caught some, executed some. Some of them were arrested and wound up in a prison in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And a lot of them came over into Western North Carolina, which kind of starts our problems. Thank you, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Not that we didn't have our own problems. So that takes place right before that's kind of why the 58th is formed. The governor, Governor Clark at the time, authorizes these ranger companies to be formed in the various mountain counties to protect the mountain passes, and that's the nucleus for the 58th. They get over into East Tennessee. You've got Carter's raid moving down toward Knoxville. You've got several other little raids. The 58th wind up at Cumberland Gap when E. Kirby Smith moves into Kentucky. And they're kind of garrisoned there in Cumberland Gap. One of the jobs they have they don't like very much is that the Federal Army has planted what they called torpedoes or landmines in the road. And the 58th have to get in there and dig those things up. So they're just here in that time period. They're getting sick. Some of them are deserting and coming back home. I mean, just typical late war or later regiment problems. And then, like I said, once Braxton Bragg begins to pull in all of these forces to go fight at what becomes the Battle of Chickamauga, they leave the area. And of course, we know that Burnside moves into Knoxville at that point in time. The Federals will control Knoxville for the rest of the war, and the Confederates control the area around Bristol and Elizabethton, and that area in between where Greenville, Mossheim, Rogersville is largely a no man's land. Longstreet is there.
That's what I was going to ask you about Longstreet, because we've talked about the museum earlier. We mentioned up there as well. You want to kind of bring in Longstreet, how he plays into some of this?
He's sent to fight at the Battle of Chickamauga. Gets there in the nick of time. The Federals have made a tactical blunder and left this big hole in their line, moving troops around. And this is the short version of this story. And Longstreet sweeps in and exploits that gap in the Federal lines. Of course, Chickamauga is one of the few Army of Tennessee victories. And after that, Longstreet just pretty much, the Army of Tennessee is racked with problems in leadership. Nobody really gets along, and Longstreet falls into that dilemma. He winds up being sent to Knoxville to try and drive Burnside out. And it didn't turn out really well. He doesn't have enough men or supplies to properly lay siege to Knoxville. And Battle of Fort Sanders doesn't work out very well either. And then after that, he moves a little further east and he goes into winter camp in and around Rogersville, Greenville, the places where Mike Beck lives. In fact, he does a fantastic tour of some of those sites and events and everything over there. And then in April of 1864, he is ordered to rejoin the Army of Northern Virginia and gets there in time for day 2 of the Battle of the Wilderness in May 1864.
Do you want to mention a little bit about some of the Confederates that may have organized in East Tennessee? That I know I saw a comment here, someone asking about that.
They're
in that area that kind of we're talking about.
So that leads me to a kind of a great little point. When I wrote Kirk Civil War Raids Along the Blue Ridge, I tried really hard to put together for these 6 Tennessee counties I'm working on a list of all of the companies that came out of these counties. And of course, you have 10 companies that make up a regiment.
Sure.
Usually those companies come from different counties, and will be formed into this regiment. They elect their colonel and lieutenant colonel and major, and they go off someplace and fight, typically. Y'all in Tennessee don't have a really good list of a county breakdown of, and let me say this, and let me challenge y'all in the Tennessee division to create a list. That would be a fantastic piece on the Tennessee division's website.
Yeah, absolutely. Each county breakdown, that would be
county breakdown.
That'd be good.
These are the companies that came from Carter County or Knox County or Campbell County or wherever.
There's some pieces of things, but there's some in our area. I've got some pieces, but it's nothing complete.
No, it is nothing complete. And I spent a long time trying to create that list, for these counties. And it was a really challenge. And one of the things I want to bring up, they're talking about soldiers who came from East Tennessee. The common numbers that are passed around is that there were 35,000 federal soldiers and about 25,000 Confederate soldiers from East Tennessee. I don't know of anybody that's ever actually counted.
Yeah, that's sometimes we say this amount, but have we ever counted?
But I can't find anybody that, and a lot of times you will have soldiers, especially that live in counties that are bordering other states. They'll go join another company in another state. There's an entire company in the 6th North Carolina Cavalry that came from Johnson County, Tennessee. There is, and I actually wrote a blog post about that, that somebody had written a while back that, Johnson County was obviously pro-Union because it had a company of Union soldiers from Johnson County. And I wrote this post and said, well, I can say that Johnson County obviously had to be a Confederate county because they had an entire Confederate company in the 6th North Carolina Cavalry. And that's one of those things that desperately needs to be examined. And it's not an easy task. But I will say,
comment there by David Pope, Michael. He says the 25,000 is based on the 200 odd companies in East Tennessee.
So 200 odd companies. How many companies were really formed in East Tennessee? Yeah. We don't know that. If you got, and even that number, so if you've got 200 companies and each company's got 100 men, that's only 20,000. And I'm not a math person, so don't give me anything more than that. But, it's not an easy task, but it really needs to be done. It could be that some of these counties that everybody says that are so pro-Union, it could be a whole lot closer, or they could be pro-Confederate counties,
And it's just been assumed it was, but the numbers have never really been done.
Just been assumed that it was. It's like I said, it's a tremendous amount of work to sit down and do this. I have done it for a couple of North Carolina counties. I took the 1860 census, I created a spreadsheet, and then I started to look for people to fill in the holes. And I actually included a lot more information, like their socioeconomic status, and several other things, when they enlisted, if they deserted, when they got killed. And I did federal soldiers as well, because I wanted to see how that works. And one of the things I discovered, there are a whole lot of men from Western North Carolina who joined the Federal Army in February, March, and April of 1865. So a lot of our good pro-Union men have hid out the entire war
and come in at the very end fresh.
Very end to get a paycheck, to get a pension, to be on the winning side. And so anytime anybody brings those people up, I really question support of
where
the
they really
Union.
stood, or they just
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, where was their unionism in 1862 and 1863? And that could be true in a lot of these companies. There's also another company I found, and I don't exactly remember which one. Actually, it was an entire regiment of Unionists from East Tennessee that didn't exist during the war.
Hmm.
I think it's the 3rd Tennessee Cavalry. That doesn't sound right. I'll have to look it up and get back
Yeah.
to you. But they, after the war was over, so they could get pensions, they created this roster of men that had served in this regiment during the war, and it was
never existed.
approved, and nobody said anything about it.
Mm.
So there's a lot of skullduggery. There's a good word for this evening.
Yeah, I mean, we
A
got
lot of,
people like this today the same way. They jump in
yeah,
at the end to reap the
yeah,
benefits.
that's right. Absolutely right. So I started doing research, and I started looking at these six Tennessee counties, and I dug as deep as I could. You know, I hit pensions, and I hit Southern Claims Commissions, and I hit newspapers and family histories and all of these things, trying to build as much of this story as possible. And I discovered several things. One of the things that I discovered is that, you know, we talk about how a lot of people, we don't talk about it that much, but a lot of people talk about how pro-union East Tennessee was. And the reason why that gets talked about is because starting in 1868, 1867, people start to write books
That's
about
true.
East Tennessee.
Mhm.
And I pulled some of them off my shelf. I won't remember all the dates right now, but you've got Dan Ellis and his Thrilling Adventures,
Yeah.
which influences everything that has been written about East Tennessee in the war since. So this book came out 67, 68, and
Mhm.
it's still a major player. It is still making an impact. You've got Oliver P. Temple's East Tennessee and Civil War. It came out before
Yeah.
the turn of the
Yeah,
20th
yeah.
century.
Mhm.
You've got Scott and Angel's history, the 13th Tennessee Cavalry, still influencing history. You've got a biography that came out, I don't remember, it's 1907 or 1937, on Parson Brownlow.
Yeah, there you go. Mhm.
Lord,
There's
he
another one.
hated Confederates. Oh my gosh,
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
man, to be a pastor, hated Confederates. What you don't have in that time period from the, say, 1870 till, gosh, I don't even know the date, more recently, like in the 1970s, you don't have any Confederate related books for the
No,
most part
yeah, I mean,
from East
you just
Tennessee.
it was
You know,
our story wasn't being told from this side. It was just not
there's
there.
no biography on Landon Carter Haynes. You know, there's no, it's not until much later that two books that came out, Noel C. Fisher's War at Every Door and Todd Gross's Mountain Rebels. And these are both new books that have come out in the very, very recent past.
Yeah, they're just few and far between of those early books telling these stories. Very few of them.
I think Fisher's book came out in 97 and Mountain Rebels came out in, that's what I get for not wearing my glasses, in 99. And, you know, that's 140 years of only one side of the story being told.
And we've lost so much information that's just been, again, as we said, lost to time, that it's hard to research and find some of these things.
It is. But we can still tell this story.
Yeah.
It can still be done. And more than anything else I want to do, I want to try and inspire people to get out and do research and tell that story. I was able to find enough stuff about East Tennessee to write Kirk's Civil War Raids Along the Blue Ridge. And it's got Kirk's name in it. George W. Kirk was not a nice guy. He was the worst of the worst. He really was. And And when you read the book, Kirk is not going to come out as a nice guy. He really doesn't. There was one raid that he did that literally came right by my house, where he used junior reserve POWs that he had captured as human shields, and laughed about it when they got shot.
Wow.
So Kirk's not a nice guy, but he doesn't come out as a nice guy. So it is possible to get out there in these counties and tell these stories, to do the research and to share that history. I mean, that's what we're all about. What does our charge say? It's our job as sons to be doing this. I think putting up tombstones is great. Putting up monuments is great. Cleaning cemeteries is great. But nobody ever goes to them cemeteries.
Yeah. This written history is important.
If you can't walk into your library and figure out what happened in your community or county or your part of the state, I'm not so sure we're doing the job that we were charged with.
We're taking care of our ancestors' final resting places, but are we really telling their story? We're leaving their story out.
Yep. And I think putting up tombstones is great. My camp's put up 250 in the past 20 years. But if
that still doesn't tell their story,
it doesn't tell their story.
Name, it's dates, and who they were, they served, but it doesn't tell.
Doesn't tell about their experiences in camp or the families they left behind, the orphans they left behind. That's just stories that we need to be telling.
Absolutely. Well, Michael Hardy's our guest this evening here on Tennessee Tuesday. Michael, you want to hang around with me a few more minutes? Let's take a break. We're going to kind of come back. We'll wrap up here and talk about a few things in the Tennessee division that's coming up as well. So stay with us. We'll be right back after this.
When my mother was in college, she danced with Confederate veterans. To me, it wasn't that far away. My father knew this. My mother knew this. Almost 50 years ago, I joined the Sons of Confederate Veterans. In those days, we weren't concerned about saving monuments or any of those things. That wasn't necessary. In fact, none of us had any remote idea that it would ever come up. We can't just sit there and react. We have to be proactive. Or, as Robert E. Lee said, the best way to disrupt your enemy's plans is to strike first. Everyone should do all in his power to collect and disseminate the truth, in the hope that it may find a place in history and descend to posterity. History is not the relation of campaigns and battles and generals or other individuals, but that which shows the principles for which the South contended and which justified her struggle for those principles. If you're looking for some place to be where you think you're going to accomplish something to save our history, go to the Sons of Confederate Veterans. I'm Thomas Lee Jesse. I'm a descendant of Private Daughtery Gilmer, a Confederate veteran.
And we continue on Tennessee Tuesday on this Tuesday, January the 13th. Thank you for watching with us tonight. Our guest is Michael C. Hardy, who is an author and historian. We've been talking about East Tennessee and the war, and also, I guess we'd say, some of Western North Carolina, where the border of Tennessee and North Carolina connect there. Some good stuff we've learned tonight and some good information so far, and we appreciate him joining us this evening. And Michael, let's talk a little bit about, again, your program Hardy on History. So if folks want to follow you and watch and hear these history discussions, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit about some of your books and how they can reach out to you.
Sure. Hardy on History. Sometimes I have a program. Sometimes I'm just, open. I usually have something to talk about, but I just kind of open the floor up. Any question anybody wants to answer. And I by no means know it all, but I will do my best to try and help folks who want to learn. I've got thousands of books here in my library, and can usually have a recommendation or two if there's something you want to learn about. Don't always talk about the 1860s, but a lot of times that seems to be where the conversation goes, which I'm perfectly good with, perfectly happy to do. So that's Hardy on History. You can usually almost always find it on Facebook. If I have a guest or somebody come on, then I'll usually throw it up on YouTube as well. I know I've got Chris Hartley coming on soon, who's going to be talking about his new book on D.H. Hill. And it's most Sunday nights, 8:30 Eastern time, 7:30 Central time. Hardy on History.
Very good show. So if they want to learn more about, how many books have you written now? How many you got to your name?
Published 28, 29 and 30 have been turned in.
Wow.
But I have written 28 published books that cover a lot of different aspects of the war. It's not all wartime history. Like I said earlier, I do some other things, do local history or whatever. But a lot of it contends with various things that deal with the 1860s and that time period. My most recent Confederate related book is Feeding Lee's Army of Northern Virginia. It looks at foodstuffs from the private's point of view. And it's been selling great. It really has. And I've been traveling all over the place talking about it. And if you want me to come to your camp, go look me up. Drop me a note. You can go to my website, michaelchardy.com. There's a contact form on there. You can drop me a note and we'll see what we can work out. Greatly enjoyed visiting a lot of the camps in the Tennessee Division. I think I was at 4 last year. Elizabeth and Rogersville, Columbia. I was at the headquarters camp.
All over.
And was it some other place? But I don't remember. After a while, it all runs together. So
absolutely. So again, that website that they can visit is, tell me one more time.
michaelchardy.com.
Simple enough. They can learn all about your books and they can reach out to you, learn about Hardy on History, the program. And if they've got questions and want to purchase materials, also, if they need anything from you, that's how they reach out to you. Again, as we get ready to wrap up this evening, again, anything else we need to include before we finish up tonight?
No, I will say that I have my first Revolutionary War book coming out probably in June of this year. And it's kind of a prequel to my Kirk Civil War Raids Along the Blue Ridge. It looks at Western North Carolina and what becomes East Tennessee. Tennessee doesn't exist yet, and the American Revolution. So be on the lookout for that. I don't have a firm date yet, but sometime this spring.
Okay, so another book coming out. Great stuff. Always thank you for being here with us. Hope you enjoyed being on with us tonight. This was fun to do this, and know that the door is always open anytime you want to come back and be with us.
Thank you very much.
All right. Michael C. Hardy has been our guest this evening, and we get ready to wrap up tonight. A couple of quick things to mention to you before we get out of here. TennesseeSCV.org. If you want to learn more about our Tennessee Division reunion, which is coming up in mid-April, that's going to be in East Tennessee, and it's going to be up in Morristown, and will also be at the General Longstreet Museum for a monument dedication. The easiest way to tell you to get the details and registration is TennesseeSCV.org. And we'll be back with you again next Tuesday night for another episode. It'll be me solo next week. We'll probably have a guest, but Jason Boshears, who is our co-host, is out and about traveling some the next couple of weeks. And I believe he's doing some Lee Jackson banquets in there as well, as those are taking place across our different camps. Again, we're glad that you've been with us tonight. Hope you've enjoyed the program. And again, as we wrap up on this Tuesday evening, I hope you have a safe rest of this week. And we will be back with you next week here on Tennessee Tuesday. Have yourself a great night, everybody. God bless.